There's perhaps no animal that is more iconic than a lion, and lions have very spectacular features, making them a really beautiful drawing exercise that provides us the opportunity to understand how to utilize shading to represent qualities of shadow and light. Furthermore, we will be understanding how to do so through the use of a coloration that is very specific to the fur coat of a lion, and in this video today we will be understanding how to kind of represent these unique moments of shadow and light with a very unique color palette. So with that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another video by artincontext.org, where we explore various interesting art related topics, and in today's video we will be breaking down the process of how to draw one of the most beautiful and most iconic animals, and that is a lion. Now this video is done on a digital device, however you can follow the same drawing process with some traditional mediums. We will be working within a layering process where we kind of work with lighter tonal values and kind of build up these tonal values with darker colors. So working with something that is really good with layering, such as paint or other drawing mediums, is kind of advised. Maybe consider using some colored pencils, but we're going to get into this tutorial by first sketching the lion's head. Now we're going to break it up by kind of working on the lion's head and then slowly connecting that feature to the lion's body, and this way we can really emphasize both these two main features of our lion and making the process a little bit more manageable. Now we're going to start with the head, and we want to work out the general features of the lion's face. So this is where we start to work out the placement of the eyes and how they pair with the snout of the lion. We will find that the nose ridge of the lion is pretty elongated and extends out from the face, and the nose also follows into the brows of the lion, which can be described as a protruding bone structure above the eyes. So we do want to make sure the nose kind of flows into the ridges, the brow ridges just above the eyes. Now the mouth of the lion does extend from beneath the nose in two directions, which establish the upper lips of the lion, and these fall along either side of the lion's mouth in kind of a drooping shape, similar to that of a cat or a dog, creating a small triangular opening towards the mouth. Now we're going to move on to the next stage, and that is where we can already start to add in some of these base colors to the lion's face. So you want to work with various brown colors where you build up different tonal values in the lion's face through layers of colors. So thinking about color variations or the spectrum between bright yellows all the way to darker browns is kind of the color palette we are working with. The idea is to establish a lighter layer first, making sure that one side is more illuminated by a light source. Now the idea is to work by adding shadows to one side of the face a little more than the other, and by doing this we create a sense of light that is interacting with the surface area of the lion's fur, giving it a little bit more three-dimensionality. Now you do want to try to work with various browns, once again working with the form of the bone structure. Once again, the intention is to set a lighter brown tonal value to establish a base color, and this kind of gives you a framework to work from, and then work in some darker brown marks along the side of the face that is slightly more shadowed, and this is where you kind of create this juxtaposition between an illuminated and shadowed area. Now naturally the ridge of the nose or the bone structure is protruding enough to kind of create a stark transition between light and darker areas on the face. So as we work around the eyes, we can also do the same by establishing some golden hues for the base color, and we can then work in some shadowing to the eye to create a little bit more three-dimensionality within the eye. We can also add a black pupil to give the lion its iconic eye coloration, and naturally once we have kind of worked in these base colors, we're going to start adding some darker colors to the lion's face. So this is where we can start to enhance the form and facial features by utilizing darker marks and line work around the different features. By using some darker line work, we also emphasize the bone structure within the lion head drawing, and we want to start playing around with various colors of brown, intending to bring more structure to the face. This is what we can do for the mane as well, that also surrounds the head of the lion, and you also want to take your time working through various areas of the lion's face, slowly building it up through different tonal values. The idea is to really build up these tonal values from lighter colors to darker colors, and this is where you kind of use the colors to establish the shape of these various features as well, especially the mane that kind of surrounds the lion's head, similar to how petals surround the disc floret within a flower structure. So we do want to think about that that circular structure of the mane around the head. And as you continue with this process, a good suggestion is to also look at some reference images of a lion's face to kind of assist you in your drawing process to get a better sense of of their coloration. We will find that we want to keep the chin fur of the lion quite light in comparison to the colors of the face. The chin of the lion, or the beard just beneath the chin of the lion, does tend to be slightly lighter, so this is just a unique feature we want to maintain as light as possible. And then lastly, we can start to kind of really work in some color layers into the mane of the lion. So the head of the lion is slightly covered by the mane that surrounds it, and we also want to establish this feature by building lines that flow around the head. Once again, think about a flower and how the petals of a flower surround a disc floret in the center of a flower structure in a very circulating fashion. Naturally, again, the idea is to work from lighter to darker colors, keeping a sense of shadow predominantly on one side as well. And this is another thing to keep note of. You do want to always kind of keep your shadow variations or shadow positions consistently to one side to maintain this realistic quality of how light is predominantly coming from a singular source or a single side within your drawing. Now, as we continue, the mane of the lion does have various colors within the fur, so you can be a little bit playful with how you build up different color variations through the use of various browns. Again, thinking about that spectrum all the way from yellows to darker browns. You want to make sure that the marks flow around the head of the lion in a very circular fashion once again. However, we still want to make sure we also work from lighter to darker strokes as we move around the head of the lion. Now, we will also have these moments of highlights that almost are white in color, so we can also consider making the fur that sits behind the head to bring the head into the foreground slightly lighter and darker in some areas. And this is where we think about the shadowed and the illuminated side of the face, working in some darker qualities in the mane behind the illuminated side of the face, and vice versa for the shadowed side of the face. The mane will also extend quite low down from the head, and this is where we can start to use the mane as a way of also defining how large the head is. Now, naturally, we'll want to spend some time on the head, the entire head structure, including the facial features and the mane, and by doing so, this is going to help us really kind of break up the lion into two main parts. The mane of the lion is also quite large, so we also want to consider how large the mane will be and how it is going to kind of serve as a means of scaling the rest of the body in relation to the actual mane and head structure. But otherwise, as we continue, we can now start to sketch the body of the lion, kind of working on some general outlines to kind of position the body. We'll find that we might have to erase it one or two times to get it right, but once we have worked out the lion head drawing, we can now begin to lightly sketch the body of the lion. So we want to take our time considering how the body fits in size and position. Once again, we might have a few iterations before we are satisfied, so try to keep it light for now. We also want to make sure that the back flows into the hind legs, which should remain quite wide near the hip. Once again, look at some reference images of the anatomical structure of a lion's body, and we will find that the lion's body is similar to that of almost a dog and cat-like structure. That's kind of like an in-between there between a feline and a canine. So we will find that those hind legs should remain quite wide and quite broad within the hips. We'll find that the legs do become slightly narrower as they move down toward the paws, and naturally this is a very unique quality to the structure of the lion's legs. Now, if you are drawing the lion from a side, we will find that we are kind of representing features that sit in the foreground and some in the background, so you also do want to think about that. You also want to think about how the legs kind of flow into the underbelly of the lion and how this creates this kind of web-like structure between the ribs and the hind legs, and how it flows into the belly and almost the rib cage that becomes slightly more protruding as we shift towards the chest of the lion. Now we can start adding some base colors to the lion's body, and this is where we start to integrate once again some light coloration into the body of the lion. We want to be conscious of which area will have more shadows as we do so. Now again, we're going to spend some time building up our tonal values of colors, thinking about how the bottom of the lion is always going to be slightly darker, naturally because it is least exposed to a light source. Now we want to work with layers once again as we slowly develop different features within the body. We also want to consider how the bone structure and muscles will create protrusions, which will inevitably cause shadows. Now this is where we can be really conscious of the three-dimensional qualities or aspects of the anatomical nature of this lion body structure and how this is interacting with the light source. So naturally there are these moments of protrusion caused by bone structure beneath the surface of the skin, so that's where we think about the rib structure and maybe the knees and so on, but the bone structure is going to cause these moments of protrusion, which will inevitably cause shadow variation. Now as you work with integrating some lighter marks, start to work in some shadow formations near the main muscle groups as well. Muscles pencils are also good at creating those striations or just protrusions from beneath the actual surface area of the skin. So really consider looking at some reference images of the anatomical nature of a line to assist you in this process. However, once we have added in some lighter tonal variations with these very light hues of brown, we can start adding some darker colors to the line's body. Now, once we feel that we have worked in some marks that define various shadows within the body, we can now start to basically enhance them with some darker tonal values. And this is where we start to integrate some darker browns and make more distinct marks and lines to kind of emphasize various features. So we can also start to work on these darker marks in the shadowed areas to create gradient shifts within the shadows of the body. And naturally, this is where we start to see how those shadows slowly transition from darker areas into lighter areas as those various features become more exposed to a light source. Now, we do want to make sure that we work our way through the legs and body, and we can start to see how we are developing a little bit more three-dimensionality once again, simply by creating those transitions between lighter and darker areas within these various tonal values of browns. Now, naturally, we can continue this process, and as you do so, think about muscle groups and their various shapes, as well as the various bone structures represented in different areas of the actual body of the lion. Now, we want to emphasize the striations once again caused by muscles and bone within the body of the lion, but at this point we can start to outline and enhance the overall form and shape of the lion drawing by going over these darker marks layer by layer, and slowly, once we have done that, we can then maybe consider contextualizing the features. Now, we should have a well-established line drawing at this point, having gone through both the head and body of the lion, and we can now start to contextualize the drawing by providing a environment or a surrounding space in which the lion is placed. Now, again, you do want to make sure that once you have completed the entire drawing of your lion, that you slowly take your time kind of refining all the details from the face to the body and ultimately to the tail, which is a part of these contextualizing details. Again, thinking about the spectrum of color, thinking about enhancing them with darker tonal values, and maintaining your color choices between these qualities of lighter yellows all the way to white and all the way to these darker browns, and ultimately even black moments where you can really enhance those shadows in their darkest moments. Again, guys, take your time with refining these qualities, and ultimately you can then move on to contextualizing your line. You can play around with a little bit of a background. This tutorial is more intentional around how to draw a line, how to consider color variation and palettes to create shadow formations and tonal variations, but ultimately you can enhance your drawing by kind of contextualizing the line within a space. And this is where you can think about creating layers to create a sense of depth within a space, maybe like mountains, and maybe playing around with darker marks in the foreground to represent this quality of grass, and your line kind of in the plains of Africa or whatever you like. But otherwise, guys, be sure to go over any details you may have overlooked, but at this point we should have a beautiful and realistic representation of a lion. And that is it, guys. This is the process of how to go about drawing a realistic line. Some key things to think about: make sure you first start by working out the shape of these two main aspects, the head of the line and then the body of the line. You can then move on to refining these details by first establishing some base colors. Make sure you always build up your colors light to dark, so you always want to work with lighter tonal values and then darker tonal values. This will give you more control over your color placement and sequences, and then from there you can really enhance these features with darker marks, where you start to work in some maybe line work, some shading, some stippling to create more texture variation, and ultimately to enhance the quality of your line on top of these base colors. And otherwise, guys, that is it. If you did like this video, please let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear back from you. We are very interested in your feedback and what kind of tutorials you are looking for, and we will get to them. So please do let us know what you are interested in, whether it is related topics and how to draw different animals or something completely different. But otherwise, guys, you can also show your support by liking and subscribing. This helps us to grow the channel, which enables us to make more art related content for you guys, which we love to do. So please do show your support by doing so. But that is it from me today. Until next time, see you in the next video. Cheers.